The first thing I heard was boots crushing the gravel outside my lake cabin, then a woman shouting like she owned the whole forest. This property is now under HOA control. Step outside with your hands visible. I froze for a second because this place had no HOA, just my quiet land by the water. When I stepped onto the porch, 3 men in black jackets were standing behind her, badges hanging from lanyards that looked like they came from a kid's craft store. The woman pointed at me like I was some criminal. "You're trespassing. This cabin is being seized today." Her voice shook the birds out of the trees. I told her calmly, "Ma'am, this is my land. I bought all 12 acres." But she smirked like she already won something. "Not anymore. The board voted. We're taking control for community safety." The closest community was 10 miles away. The guys behind her lifted their hands toward their belts like they were waiting for a reason to act. That's when I noticed something. Off, one of them still had a barcode sticker on his badge. Another one kept shifting his eyes like he wasn't ready for whatever script she gave him. She stepped closer, heels sinking in the dirt, and jabbed a rolled-up notice against my chest. "Pack your things. You'll be escorted out." I didn't touch the paper. I just stared at her. She looked so sure of herself, so full of power she didn't actually have. And maybe she thought I'd panic, that I'd beg or argue. Instead, I turned slowly and walked back inside, leaving the door cracked just enough for them to see what I grabbed. My shotgun. Not raised, not aimed, just held the way someone holds a tool they know well. And instantly the 3 HOA cops stiffened, like their feet were glued to the porch. The woman's voice finally cracked. "What do you think you're doing? You can't threaten enforcement officers," I said quietly. "Then maybe you should bring real ones next time." Her face went pale, and one of the men whispered to her, "Ma'am, I told you he looks like..." She elbowed him before he finished, but I heard it. She knew something about me, something she hoped I'd never discover she knew. For a long moment we just stared at each other, my hands steady, her fake officers backing up step by step. Then she hissed, "You don't know who you're fighting." I smiled a little. "You have no idea who you just messed with." And that was the moment things truly started to break apart. The woman didn't leave. She only retreated far enough to whisper with her fake officers, all of them glancing at me like they were waiting for some signal. The wind off the lake blew her hair across her face, but she kept brushing it back with the same shaky anger, like she couldn't believe someone dared to stand up to her. Then she snapped her fingers, and one of the men rushed to the back of a black SUV. He pulled out something that made my stomach twist. A steel tow chain. She looked straight at me and shouted, "We're taking the cabin by force." My heart dropped for a second. Not from fear, but because this cabin was the last thing my father built before he passed. Every window, every beam. His hands touched it all, and she wanted to drag it like trash just to prove she had power. The fake officers wrapped the chain around the porch post, laughing quietly like this was some game. I saw one of them recording on his phone, probably hoping I'd lose control so they could use it against me. She stood with her arms crossed, smiling wider than before. "Don't worry," she said. "I already filed a complaint saying you threatened us. Real cops will be here any minute." That was her twist, but she didn't know mine. I walked back to the porch and placed my shotgun gently on the swing. No threat, no sudden move, just enough to confuse them. Then I grabbed the small metal box I kept near the door. Dusty, dented, locked with a simple latch. She squinted at it like she expected it to hold explosives. "What is that supposed to be?" she snapped. I opened it and held up a single laminated card, old, worn, and stamped with an emblem she absolutely recognized the second she saw it. Her smile died on her lips. The men behind her froze. One of them stepped back so fast he tripped on the gravel. "Ma'am, you didn't tell us he was..." She barked at him to shut up, but her voice cracked again. She tried to hide her fear with a laugh. "That doesn't mean anything. You're not active. You don't have authority." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just pointed toward the security pole near the tree line. Small, brown, almost invisible. The light on top was blinking red. Recording, streaming, backed up. Every second of her stunt was already saved in 3 different places. Her jaw clenched. She whispered to the man with the phone, "Get that chain moving now." He hesitated but obeyed, walking toward the truck. The engine roared. The chain tightened. My father's porch started to creak. A crack ran across the railing. That sound hit something deep in me. I stepped off the porch, slow and steady, and the men looked at me like I was walking with a bomb in my hands. I didn't touch the gun, didn't raise a fist. I simply said, "Unhook it now." The driver looked at the woman. She nodded for him to keep going. He revved the engine harder. The porch groaned again. I leaned closer to the woman and whispered just loud enough for her to hear. "You should have checked who owns this land." She swallowed hard, because she finally realized the name on the deed wasn't just mine, and that was the twist she never saw coming. The truck strained harder, engine screaming, the chain digging into the porch beam like it wanted to rip my father's memory right out of the ground. The woman kept yelling, "Pull! Don't stop!" even though her voice was shaking so much it barely sounded like her anymore. But the driver's eyes were glued to something behind me, something that made his hands fall off the wheel. Real sirens. Not loud, controlled, steady. The kind used when officers don't want the whole mountain to hear them coming. 2 squad cars rolled up my dirt road, tires grinding slow, deliberate. The woman's face drained of color. She whispered, "No. No, they weren't supposed to actually come." The first officer stepped out, tall, calm, and already annoyed. "We got a report of a threat with a firearm." His gaze swept the scene, the tow chain, the fake badges, the trembling SUV, my untouched shotgun resting safely on the swing. Then his eyes landed on the laminated card still in my hand. His entire posture changed. "Sir, we didn't know it was you who called the land alarm." "I didn't," I replied. "It activates when someone trespasses with intent." The woman tried to jump in. "Officer, arrest him." He pointed a gun at... He cut her off with a small laugh. "Ma'am, we've been watching the live feed from his security pole for the last 20 minutes. The other officers circled. Her fake HOA cops, and one tugged the badge off a man's chest and said, 'These aren't even close to regulation.' Another lifted the chain and shook his head. 'Property destruction, trespassing, impersonating officers. False report. That's 4 felonies and we're not done yet.' The woman's knees buckled. She tried to step back, but her own fake officer moved away from her like she was contagious. She whispered, 'You can't arrest me. I'm part of the community board.' I finally spoke, slow and calm. 'There is no HOA here. Never was. This land isn't even zoned for it.' I held up the card again, letting the sun hit the emblem she feared so much. 'And this cabin?' 'My father built it. The deed is in both our names, mine and the United States government.' The officers paused, stunned. The lead one nodded with respect. 'So this is one of the veteran trust properties.' The woman's eyes widened like she'd been thrown into ice water. He's a vet?' I stepped closer so she had no choice but to look at me. I didn't fight outside this country just to be bullied on my own land. Her lips trembled. 'Please, don't let them take me.' 'I didn't know.' 'You knew enough to lie,' I said. The officers cuffed her while she cried, her fake authority finally collapsing under the weight of real law. The men she brought were arrested too, all of them staring at the ground like they finally realized their little power fantasy just ended with steel around their wrists. When they were taken away, the lead officer turned to me. 'Your cabin is safe. The footage is enough for a full conviction.' He hesitated, then added quietly, 'Your father would be proud.' I looked at the cracked porch beam, the one she tried to tear down, and felt my chest tighten. He built this place so his family would always have somewhere safe. The officer nodded once and headed back to the cars. As the sirens faded, the lake went calm again, the way it always does after a storm. The chain lay in the dirt like a dead snake. The cabin still stood strong, and I stood there staring at the water, breathing slow, steady, knowing the truth. Some people think power comes from shouting, threatening, and pretending to be important, but real power, the kind that protects land, family, and honor, it only shows itself when you're pushed so far that you finally say, 'Not on my soil.' And that was the end of her reign, and the day my quiet lake cabin became the safest place in the world again.